Yes, my name is John Leggett. I'm the Mayor of Marlborough. I should say at least until October this year. But I'm presenting this submission on behalf of Marlborough District Council, and I would like to point out I speak with the unanimous support of councillors. As you've acknowledged, you have our written submission, which you've all read. It is important for Marlborough District Council to fully participate in this process. As a council, we've taken steps in recent times to stay informed around this proposed reform, especially over the last 3 years. And the simple reason for this is that we want to be able to respond in a very balanced and informed way. And that's not only to DIA, but also to our ratepayers, our community. We took on board very early on those little quips. The status quo is not an option. The case for change is well understood, and we can't keep kicking the can down the road. I don't know how many times I've heard that in the last 4 or 5 years, but it's more than once. Some background on our region. We are a unitary authority, a land area of 17,500 square kilometres, with the third largest land area of all New Zealand territorial and unitary authorities. We have a fifth of New Zealand's coastline, population of 51,000 people, so we rank 25 out of 67 councils. Half of our population lives in Blenheim and the surrounds, the balance spread to smaller townships, most notably Picton, Renwick, Havelock, Rye Valley, and in southern Marlborough, Seddon and Ward. We have a credit rating, one of the small group that have an AA plus S&P Global credit rating. Our LTP is very much infrastructure driven. We know the numbers around our 3 waters, and we know that the DIA information that came through with the initial reports is exaggerated. As a council, we've been drawn to C4LD and support its submission. We are a financial supporter, and we support the alternative model proposed and the work that Castalia has put into the new model. Moving to our submission, we acknowledge challenges. We acknowledge the need to increase investment levels in 3-water infrastructure, although it's accepted, of course, that this varies across New Zealand. Marlborough District Council doesn't see the 4 mega entity model as the solution. Key concerns. The committee will be familiar with most, if not all of these. Firstly, loss of democratic influence and control, and that's putting aside the split boundary issue that we have. Entity C will consist of 21 territorial authorities, and given that only 6 or 7 council representatives are proposed for regional representative groups, the odds of Marlborough District Council being represented at that level are not strong. Marlborough District Council may have a representative on the Regional Advisory Panel, but the number and makeup of these panels is yet to be determined by the Water Services Entity Constitution. Given the importance of 3 waters to the regional environment, health, economy, and community generally, this representation uncertainty is unacceptable. The committee will be familiar, of course, with the Auditor General's concerns raised around accountability in this rollout, and also the Auckland City Council's submission has highlighted similar concerns. Secondly, the loss of responsiveness and flexibility. This, of course, is closely connected to the loss of local democratic influence and control. Our contention is that the rigid set of planning controls will significantly reduce the ability to respond quickly and flexibly to opportunities presented by the community, prospective developers and investors. At present, we can and do respond quickly to these opportunities. The question, how are our needs prioritised when compared, for example, with Wellington in Entity C or Christchurch in Entity D? In my time as Mayor, we've experienced earthquakes, Kaikoura 2016, for example, and a number of flood events, and we're currently going through a flood event recovery phase as we speak. 3 waters, rivers and roading teams are vital to effective response in most emergencies, and particularly climatic events. Shifting governance, management and control to another entity not located in Marlborough could seriously impact on that. Local Government New Zealand and Taituara have expressed similar concerns, and I'm sure there are many others. Thirdly, lack of alignment, Three Waters, RM reform, future for local government review. I want to centre on our boundary issue that's right in front of us. It's proposed that southern Marlborough, which includes Seddon and Ward, that's about 25k and 50k from Blenheim, and then there's daylight to the next town of any size, will be part of Entity D, and the rest of Marlborough in Entity C. Now, what is the sense in this? How can this lead to better drinking water quality and better environmental outcomes? Incidentally, Minister Mahuta met with Tito Ihu mayors and CEs during the local government conference in Blenheim in July 2021 to discuss the proposed boundary. It was left at that time that we are listening, we will get back to you. That never happened. And when it was raised recently, we were told that the boundary is not negotiable. And I find that quite disrespectful. Fourthly, inadequate consideration of alternative options. We all accept the need for reform. We support the formation and work of Tamara Arawai. We do not accept that a mega entity structure will deliver the major investment increases and governance and management improvements necessary to achieve the service delivery aspects of the reform objectives. As I've said, Marlborough District Council is a member of C4LD and supports the alternative model it proposes. Fifthly, the boundaries between entities C and D. DIA have attempted to find a way to make this work from a delivery perspective that has failed. Once again, we started engagement with a hiss and a roar, but it's gone nowhere and engagement's petered out. Following from that, the three Tito Ihu councils, Tito Ihu Iwi, have made a joint submission advocating that Marlborough, Nelson and Tasman be included in Entity D, i.e. South Island. That's if the reform goes ahead as currently proposed. In conclusion, our submission is that it is sensible to push the pause button on this reform. There's got to be acceptance that it needs a lot more work and alternatives need to be explored. Submissions should be made and be able to be made without time constraints. Tamara Arawai is up and running. It's an opportunity to call out underinvesting councils and to set some parameters, timeframes around improvement. Get some decent comms out. Those childish cartoons were never going to cut it. They are degrading the work of local government. The question I have is, was that a strategy to push the rollout onto local authorities? And if that was the case, it's worked. We've carried the burden of trying to take this out to our communities in a very balanced way, and it's been difficult for us. We have enough pressures in providing data and being part of the information gathering. We've had COVID as a shadow in the background, so it's been very difficult dealing with day-to-day operations as well as all this additional work. The flood event last week has taken a lot of resource out of Marlborough District Council, and it's been difficult for us to be able to prioritise some of the work that's required.
I was going to let you know you've got about a minute left and we've got 2 questions from members, so if you'd like to come to your conclusion.
I'm just about there, thank you. The question for you is, if these reforms are said to be intergenerational and transformational, if those current proposals are so good, they should speak for themselves. What we have at the moment is divided local government, and we have angry communities throughout New Zealand. We have tried to be balanced. The pendulum has fallen very much in opposing the model that's been proposed. You've got to give the can another kick down the road. You're not there yet. Just as a personal comment, and it's something I thought about earlier on today, this reform has followed that backcasting model that we see often in government and in business, and it's quite a common way of doing things. This should have been done in a co-design way. There should have been central, local and iwi involvement in designing an end product that was fit for purpose. So that's the end of my comments, and I'm very happy if I can to answer any questions that the panel may have, and I respect the timeframes and the opportunity to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go first to Maureen Pugh.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Leggett, you mentioned the flooding that's happening in your area and the cleanup that's happening at the moment. Can I just get you to think about, if this model was in place right now, how the council would be working in cleaning up roading, footpaths, other infrastructure, and matching that with a separate entity for the water infrastructure? Can you foresee how that may work or may not work?
We're struggling. It's something we thought about last week when we were going through the response, because when you get an emergency like we had, you need to be able to move quickly. And as an example, in Havelock, we had an issue there with the water supply. So we had to get in very, very early in the piece. There was questions of contamination that were around. So it had to be a very quick response. I don't know how a mega model can set up systems locally here for us, for example, to be able to deal with those sort of things. I'm sure there'll be some smart people that'll come up with ways of dealing with it. But what I'm saying is that we need to have a very much a localised response when it comes to these sort of climatic issues that we seem to be having more and more often.
Thank you. Honourable Eugenie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mayor Leggett, and just acknowledge the huge leadership that you and Council have provided in responding to the very challenging flooding events. It's related to Maureen Pugh's question. So the government obviously has some numbers to put this bill through. If it does proceed, would a requirement in the bill that some of the entity staff be based locally help?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, at the moment, we've got 58 people in our council that are either directly or indirectly involved in the rollout of our 3 waters. And we do rely on consultants from away. But coming back to our long-term plan, I mean, it's always been a real driving force of this council, particularly in my time on council, that we get our 3 waters infrastructure really front and centre when it comes to our budgeting. And I think we've done that really well. And so we're struggling with this idea that we're going to rely on an entity based somewhere else to be able to, allow us to respond quickly to our needs locally here.
Thank you. And would you mind providing your notes subsequently through to the Secretariat, because it filled out quite a lot on the council submission. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your words.
Thank you very much, Mayor Leggett. We'll now go to our final submission before our lunch break, which is Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu.